It starts in 1762. Abigail Smith is 15, living in Weymouth, Massachusetts with her family. Her father's a minister, pretty well respected in the community. But here's the thing about Abigail. She's not like other girls her age. While everyone else is learning embroidery and how to manage servants, she's sneaking into her father's library reading philosophy books. Her mother keeps scolding her, saying no man wants a wife who's smarter than him. Abigail just rolls her eyes and keeps reading. 2 years later, she's 17, and her sister Mary is courting this guy named Richard Cranch. Richard brings his friend along to their house one day, this short, chubby lawyer from Braintree named John Adams. John walks in, sees all these young women in their fancy dresses doing needlework, and looks absolutely miserable. He's 28, already cynical about marriage because most women he's met just giggle and talk about the weather. Then Abigail opens her mouth. They're all sitting in the parlor, and someone mentions a book. John makes some comment about it, probably trying to show off. Abigail immediately disagrees with his interpretation, just flat out tells him he's wrong. Everyone else in the room goes silent, because women didn't do that. You didn't contradict men, especially not educated lawyers. But John? He lights up. Finally, someone interesting. They start debating right there in the parlor. Philosophy, religion, politics, everything. Her family is horrified. Her friend Richard is trying not to laugh, and these two are just going at it, completely absorbed in conversation. John leaves that day totally smitten. He writes to Richard, asking about the little Abigail, starts finding excuses to visit. Every time he shows up, they end up in these marathon conversations. He's never met anyone like her. She's read everything, has opinions on everything, and doesn't pretend to be dainty or silly. Abigail's intrigued too. Most men her age are boring. They want to talk about horses or land inheritance. John talks about ideas, about how society should work, about justice and human rights. Plus, he's funny in this grumpy, sarcastic way that makes her laugh. Her parents are not thrilled. John's a lawyer, sure, but he's not wealthy. He's got this little farm in Braintree that barely makes money. He's obsessed with his work, kind of awkward socially. They were hoping Abigail would marry someone with better prospects. But Abigail doesn't care. She sees something in him that others miss. This fire, this brilliance. She knows he's going to do something important, even if nobody else does yet. They start writing letters when they're apart. John's practicing law, traveling to different towns for cases. Abigail's stuck at home. But their letters, oh my goodness, their letters are something else. He calls her Diana, after the Roman goddess. She calls him Lysander, this Spartan general. They're creating this private world where they can be completely themselves. John writes about his insecurities, how he feels overlooked, how other lawyers treat him like he's nobody. Abigail basically saying, stop whining and prove them wrong. She's supportive, but she doesn't coddle him. When he's being dramatic, she calls him out. When he doubts himself, she reminds him what he's capable of. In October 1764, they get married. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. Abigail's mother's still lukewarm about the whole thing, but the moment they say their vows, you can tell. These two are partners in the truest sense. They move to Braintree, to John's little farmhouse. It's modest, kind of run down, actually. Abigail doesn't complain. She starts managing the household, the farm, everything. John's constantly away for work, riding circuit as a lawyer. She's alone a lot, but she's capable. She keeps detailed records of expenses, manages laborers, makes business decisions. Their first baby, Abigail, they call her Nabby, arrives in 1765. Then John Quincy in 1767, then Susanna, who dies as an infant, which absolutely devastates them both, then Charles in 1770, and Thomas in 1772. 4 surviving children in 7 years, and John's gone for weeks at times working cases. Abigail never complains about this either. She believes in what he's doing. John's building a reputation as this brilliant, principled lawyer. In 1770, he does something that makes everyone talk. He defends the British soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre. Everyone in Massachusetts wants these soldiers hanged. Defending them is social suicide. But John believes in fair trials, even for people everyone hates. Abigail supports him completely, even though neighbors stop talking to them, even though people whisper that they're traitor sympathizers. She tells him he did the right thing, and she means it. Then things start getting really tense politically. British troops are everywhere. There are new taxes, new restrictions. People are angry. John starts getting involved in colonial politics, writing essays about British tyranny. He's becoming this voice for independence, even though that word scares most people. In 1774, everything changes. The First Continental Congress gets called. Delegates from different colonies are meeting in Philadelphia to figure out what to do about Britain. Massachusetts picks John as one of their representatives. The morning he has to leave, Abigail wakes up before dawn. She makes him breakfast, packs his bags. Their kids are still sleeping. They sit at the kitchen table together, and neither of them knows what to say. This isn't like when he leaves for court cases. This is different, dangerous. Men who openly oppose Britain end up arrested, or worse. John tells her he'll be back in a few weeks. They both know he's lying. Abigail just nods. She walks him outside, where his horse is waiting. He kisses her, holds her longer than usual. Then he rides away, and she stands there watching until he's completely out of sight. She goes back inside. The children are awake now, asking where Papa went. She tells them he's helping to fix problems with the king. She doesn't tell them she has no idea when they'll see him again. Days pass. Abigail keeps busy. There's always work to do. Cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, teaching the children their letters. But at night, after everyone's asleep, she sits at the table with a candle and writes to John. Her first letter is chatty. She tells him about the farm, about what the kids did that day, but then her tone shifts. She admits she's scared. British soldiers are getting more aggressive in Boston. There are rumors of rebellion brewing. She asks him to be careful, to come home safe. John receives her letter in Philadelphia. He's sharing a room with other delegates in a crowded boarding house. The meetings are intense. Men shouting, arguing about whether they should push back against Britain or try to reconcile. Some delegates think rebellion is suicide. Others think submission is cowardice. John writes back late at night. He tells Abigail about the debates, about how slowly everything moves. He complains about delegates from the southern colonies who won't commit to anything. But mostly, he writes about missing her, how he hates sleeping alone, how he keeps thinking about their conversations at home, how he wishes she was there because she cut through everyone's nonsense in 5 minutes. Abigail needs her letter over and over. Then she writes back. This time, she doesn't just talk about domestic stuff. She tells him what she's observing, how ordinary people are talking about the political situation, what women think, what farmers think. She's giving him intelligence about public sentiment that none of the other delegates are hearing. John realizes something reading her letters. She's not just his wife, she's his advisor, his sounding board, the person who understands him better than anyone alive. Congress finally wraps up after almost 2 months. John comes home exhausted. He's lost weight, looks haggard, but he's also energized. Things are happening. Change is coming. He gets maybe 6 weeks at home. Then in May 1775, he has to leave again for the Second Continental Congress, except now, everything is different. War has started. Lexington and Concord have been fought. British and colonial soldiers have actually killed each other. This isn't theoretical anymore. The night before John leaves, Abigail and John lie awake in bed talking. She asks him what's going to happen. He's honest. He doesn't know. War might last months or years. Men might hang for treason. The colonies might lose everything. Abigail asks if he has to go. He says yes. She says she knows. They hold each other in the dark, and neither of them sleeps much. When he leaves this time, Abigail knows it's for real. This isn't weeks. This is going to be long. She watches him ride away, then she goes inside and starts preparing. If John's going to be gone, she needs to make sure the farm survives, that the children are safe, that everything holds together. Weeks go by. John's letters arrive sporadically. He writes about debates over whether to form an army, about choosing George Washington as commander, about the impossibility of getting 13 colonies to agree on anything. His letters are full of frustration, but also determination. He believes in what they're fighting for, even when it seems hopeless. Abigail's letters back are detailed, almost like news reports. She describes the Battle of Bunker Hill, which she actually watched from a distance with young John Quincy. She writes about the sounds, cannons booming, buildings burning, about how terrified everyone was, about friends whose husbands or sons died in that battle. John reads her account and feels sick. His family's living in a war zone while he's in Philadelphia debating. He writes back begging her to take the children somewhere safer. She writes back saying, "No, this is our home. She's not abandoning it. Besides, where would she go? The whole region is unstable. At least here she knows the land, knows their neighbors. She'll manage." And she does. Summer of 1775 is brutal. Food's getting scarce because trade is disrupted, British ships are blockading harbors, prices for everything skyrocket. Abigail starts trading goods with neighbors, bartering instead of using currency that's becoming worthless. She plants extra vegetables, preserves everything she can, teaches the kids to be frugal. She's also starting managing their finances more actively. John sends money when he can, but it's irregular. Abigail begins making investments, buying land when prices are low. She's got this incredible head for business that nobody expected. Women weren't supposed to handle money, but with John gone, she has to, and she's good at it. Meanwhile, John's in Philadelphia dealing with absolute chaos. Congress is trying to fight a war with no money, no centralized authority, no real army. Delegates argue constantly. Some still want reconciliation with Britain. John is firmly in the independence camp now, writing essays and letters, pushing for a complete break. He and Abigail write constantly, sometimes multiple letters a week,
though delivery is unpredictable. Their correspondence becomes this lifeline. He tells her everything, his doubts, his fears, his hopes. She does the same. These aren't polite, formal letters. They're raw, honest, intimate. In one letter, John admits he's exhausted. He feels inadequate, that maybe they should have picked someone else to represent Massachusetts. Abigail writes back, essentially telling him to stop feeling sorry for himself, that he's exactly where he needs to be, doing exactly what needs doing. She's loving but firm, no pity party allowed. In another letter, Abigail describes her loneliness, how she goes to bed every night reaching for him and finding empty space, how she hears his voice sometimes and turns around forgetting he's not there, how hard it is being both mother and father to their children. John writes back that he's the same, phantom conversations with her all day, turning to tell her something before remembering she's hundreds of miles away. Then, in early 1776, something terrible happens. Smallpox breaks out in Boston. It's spreading like wildfire. People are dying every day. Entire families wiped out. Abigail's terrified. Smallpox kills children regularly. She's got 4 kids who've never been exposed, which means they have no immunity. If it reaches their house, they could all die. There's this new procedure called inoculation. Basically, you deliberately infect someone with a mild case of smallpox so they build immunity. But it's risky. Some people die from the inoculation itself. It's controversial, and a lot of people think it's playing God. Abigail makes a decision. She's getting herself and all 4 children inoculated. She doesn't write to John asking permission because there's no time for letters to reach Philadelphia and return. She just does it. She takes the kids to Boston in July. They all get inoculated. Then comes the waiting period. You have to stay isolated while the disease runs its course. For weeks, they're stuck in a boarding house. All 5 of them get sick. Fevers, chills, the characteristic pustules. Abigail's trying to nurse 4 sick children while dealing with her own symptoms. Young John Quincy, who's 9, gets really sick, high fever for days. Abigail sits by his bed, convinced he's going to die. She's too sick herself to even write to John. She just prays and waits. Slowly, they all recover. It takes almost a month. When they're finally cleared to leave, Abigail's exhausted but relieved. They're all immune now, one less nightmare to worry about. She writes to John about this after the fact, just casually mentions, "Oh, by the way, we all got inoculated and nearly died, but we're fine now." John receives this letter and absolutely loses his mind. His wife and children almost died, and he wasn't there, didn't even know it was happening. He writes back this anguished letter about how helpless he feels, how brave she is, how guilty he is for being absent. Abigail writes back telling him to calm down. She made the choice. It was the right choice. Everyone survived, moving on. But you can tell it affects John deeply. He starts questioning whether he should come home, whether Congress matters more than his family. Abigail senses this in his next letter and shuts it down immediately. She tells him that what he's doing matters, that their children will grow up in whatever country he helps create, that his presence in Philadelphia is exactly where he needs to be. In the spring of 1776, John's working on something massive. Congress is finally moving toward declaring independence. He's on the committee drafting the document, along with Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and others. Jefferson does most of the writing, but John's pushing, debating, convincing reluctant delegates. He writes to Abigail about this, asking her thoughts. Should they really declare independence? Is it worth the risk? They could all hang for treason if this fails. Abigail writes back with this incredible letter. She says, yes, declare independence, but remember women when you're making new laws. Don't create a country where only men have rights. She writes something like, remember the ladies and be more generous to them than your ancestors. Do not put unlimited power in the hands of husbands. This letter is radical. Women demanding political consideration in 1776? Unheard of. John actually writes back teasing her about it, saying men won't give up their power easily. But you can tell he takes her seriously. He's thinking about her arguments. July 1776, the Declaration of Independence gets signed. John writes to Abigail immediately. He's ecstatic, but also scared. They've just committed treason against the most powerful empire on earth. There's no going back now. Abigail gets his letter weeks later. She reads it to the children, explains that their father just helped birth a new nation. Young John Quincy asks if Papa's coming home now. She says no, not yet. The war intensifies. British forces are everywhere. Washington's army is struggling, losing battles, retreating. The revolution looks like it might collapse before it really starts. Morale is terrible. John stays in Philadelphia, now helping run a government that barely functions. They have no money, no credit. Foreign countries won't recognize them. Everything is chaos. He writes to Abigail about the impossibility of it all. How can 13 colonies, each with their own interests, possibly work together? Abigail writes back with observations from regular people. She tells him what farmers are saying, what women are saying, gives him perspective he can't get from other politicians. Her letters become intelligence reports mixed with personal news. Life at the farm gets harder. Currency is nearly worthless. Food is scarce. Abigail's constantly figuring out how to make ends meet. She starts buying goods in bulk when she can, selling surplus to neighbors. She's basically running a small business while raising 4 kids alone. The children grow up barely knowing their father. John Quincy is becoming a serious, studious boy, exactly like John. Nabby is helping her mother manage household tasks. Charles and Thomas are younger, more playful. They ask about their father, but he's more concept than reality to them. Abigail writes about this, how heartbreaking it is watching children grow up without their father, how Nabby is becoming a young woman and John's missing it, how the boys need a father figure, but she doesn't ask him to come home. She knows he can't. In 1777, Congress sends John to France. They need French support. Money, ships, soldiers. Without French help, the revolution will fail. John's one of the diplomats chosen for this crucial mission. Abigail gets the news and her world stops. France? Across the Atlantic Ocean? Months of travel, even more dangerous than Philadelphia because of British naval ships. And if he makes it there, he'll be gone for who knows how long. John comes home first, briefly, to prepare. It's been over a year since they've seen each other. When he walks through the door, Abigail barely recognizes him. He's aged dramatically. Gray hair, deep wrinkles, exhausted eyes. They have 2 weeks together. 2 weeks to compress years of separation into conversations. They talk constantly, catching up, planning, discussing the future. The children cling to John, especially the younger ones who barely remember him. John Quincy, now 10, begs to go with him. He wants to see the world, help the cause. Abigail's torn. He's so young, but it's also an incredible opportunity. After agonizing over it, they decide yes, John Quincy will go to France with his father. The day they leave is awful. Abigail stands on the dock watching John and young John Quincy board a ship. She's sending her husband and oldest son across an ocean during wartime. The ship could sink. British vessels could capture them. She might never see either of them again. The ship pulls away. Abigail stands there for hours after it disappears from view. Then she goes home to Nabby, Charles, and Thomas. 3 children left. She has to be strong for them. The next 2 years are the hardest of her life. Letters take months to arrive. If they arrive at all, ships sink regularly. Sometimes half a year passes with no word. Abigail has no idea if John and John Quincy are alive or dead, but she writes anyway, letter after letter, sending them on every ship heading to Europe, hoping one reaches him. She writes about the farm, the children, the war effort, about how she's managing financially, making investments, keeping everything afloat, about how much she misses him. When letters finally arrive from John, she reads them dozens of times. He writes about Paris, about tedious negotiations with French officials who won't commit to helping, about how difficult it is working with other American diplomats who have different agendas, about John Quincy, who's thriving in France, learning French, studying with tutors. But mostly, John writes about missing her, how he lies awake in French boarding houses thinking about their farm, about conversations they had, about her laugh, her mind, her presence. He's been away 3 years now, 3 years of separation, and it's eating him alive. Abigail's letters back are increasingly assertive. She's been managing everything alone for years now. She's made financial decisions, business deals, raised children, survived a war zone. She's not the same woman John left. She's harder, more confident, more independent. She writes about this too, about how strange it'll be when he comes home. They've both changed so much. Will they even recognize each other? Will they still fit together the way they used to? In 1779, John comes home briefly. The diplomatic mission didn't accomplish much, and
Congress recalls him. But the reunion is bittersweet because everyone knows he'll be sent back soon. They have a few months together. It's awkward at first. They're almost like strangers, but gradually they fall back into old rhythms, talking late into the night, debating politics, laughing at inside jokes, and remembering why they fell in love. Then, Congress sends him back to Europe. This time, he's going to negotiate peace treaties and establish diplomatic relations. It's even more important than before, and he'll be gone even longer. Abigail wants to scream. She's so tired of being alone, so tired of managing everything by herself. But she doesn't say this. She just nods and starts preparing for another separation. John Quincy goes with him again. Now there are 12 more young men than boys. Abigail sends both of them off once more, standing on the dock, watching ships disappear. The years blur together. 1780, 1781, 1782. Abigail manages the farm, which has actually become quite profitable under her management. She buys more land, invests in various ventures, handles legal matters. She's become a formidable businesswoman, even though society doesn't really have a place for that. Her letters to John continue, but they change tone. She's not the wife waiting patiently at home anymore. She's a partner, providing insights, advice, and criticism when needed. She challenges his decisions, questions his priorities. She's become fully herself, and she's not apologizing for it. John recognizes this. His letters back show respect, even awe. He consults her on political matters, shares diplomatic challenges, treats her as an intellectual equal because that's what she is. In 1783, the war finally ends. The Treaty of Paris gets signed. America wins independence. It's real now, a new country, an actual nation. John stays in Europe. There's still diplomatic work, establishing trade agreements, setting up embassies. Abigail's furious. The war's over. When is he coming home? She writes him a blunt letter, says she's done waiting. Either he comes home or she's coming there. She's tired of letters. She wants her husband back. John writes back, saying, come to Europe, bring Nabby, see Paris, London. They can be together while he finishes his work. Abigail makes this gutsy decision. She's never traveled further than Boston. Now she's sailing across the Atlantic to Europe. She's 40 years old, leaving her younger sons with relatives, taking Nabby with her. The ocean voyage is terrifying. Storms, rough seas, terrible food. She's been seasick for weeks, but she refuses to turn back. She arrived in London in 1784. John meets her there. They see each other across a room and suddenly 9 years collapse. They're just John and Abigail again, the couple who fell in love debating philosophy. They hold each other for a long time. Abigail's crying, John's crying, Nabby's crying, everyone's crying. They spend the next several years in Europe together. John's appointed the first American ambassador to Britain, which is wild, representing America to the country they just defeated. Abigail becomes a diplomatic wife, hosting events, meeting foreign officials. She's good at it, but hates it. All the fake politeness, the social games. She wants to go home, to their farm, their life. Finally, in 1788, they return to America. They've been separated, together in Europe, but away from home for over a decade. When they arrive back at the farm in Braintree, Abigail literally kisses the ground. Their younger sons, Charles and Thomas, are teenagers now, virtual strangers. John Quincy is a young man studying law. The family has to figure out how to be a family again. It's not easy. Everyone's changed. But slowly, they rebuild. Then politics calls again. John gets elected vice president under Washington. Then in 1796, the president. Abigail's the first lady now, which comes with its own pressures. They're together more, but it's complicated. John's presidency is controversial, stressful. He makes decisions that Abigail disagrees with. They argue, but they also still love each other deeply. Throughout everything, they keep writing letters whenever they're apart. Even short separations mean letters. It's their way of processing thoughts, staying connected. John's presidency ended in 2000. He loses re-election to Thomas Jefferson, which devastates him. They retire back to Braintree, now called Quincy. Finally, they're home for good. The next 17 years, they're together, aging, dealing with health problems, watching children and grandchildren. Their son Charles dies from alcoholism, which breaks their hearts. But they have each other. They talk about their letters sometimes, about all those years of separation, about how those letters kept them together when everything else was trying to pull them apart. Abigail dies in 1818, at 73. John's lost without her. He lives another 8 years, until 1826. Dies on July 4th, 50 years after the Declaration of Independence. One of his last statements is about Abigail, how he'll see her again soon. Years later, their descendants go through trunks of family papers. They find over 1,100 letters between John and Abigail. They start reading them and realize what they have. This incredible, intimate record of two people's lives, of a marriage that survived war, separation, and political turmoil. Those letters get published. Historians study them. People are amazed at how honest they are, how Abigail spoke her mind about everything, politics, women's rights, human nature, how John admitted doubts and fears, how they functioned as true partners when that was basically unheard of. Those letters became their legacy, not just John's political achievements or Abigail's management of the family, but their partnership, their refusal to let distance destroy what they built, their commitment to staying connected through words when they couldn't be physically together. Over 1,000 letters, written late at night, by candlelight, on rough paper with quill pens, sent across dangerous miles, sometimes lost forever, sometimes arriving months late, but always written, always honest, always keeping them together when everything else was trying to pull them apart. That's the story. Two people who found each other, built something extraordinary, and then spent years proving that a real partnership doesn't need proximity, just honesty, courage, and the willingness to keep writing, keep talking, keep connecting, no matter what.